In the first scene, we see Adela hosting the final episode of her cooking show, Alto Cocina, which is a hit with both the viewers and the crew. Adela has come a long way from being a diner cook in San Antonio's Romero's, where she met her late husband, Mauricio, to hosting her cooking show on TV. She looks exhausted and the smile on her face slips off the minute the producer yells cut. She has somewhere else to be, but as she tries to rush out of the studio, her manager Matthias intercepts her. He reminds her of her scheduled interview with the food writer. Adela is in a fix. She has her daughter Fabiola's football match to attend. Although her mother-in-law, Socorro, is in town to help out with Fabiola, or Fabi as she is called, Adela strives to be a hands-on mom and also fulfill her promise to see Fabi's game. Missing her game runs the risk of putting her in Fabiola's bad books. Her teenage outbursts are in full force, and Adela would rather not be at the receiving end. She also has to consider her work, which puts food on their tables. Reluctantly, she decides to rush through the interview and perhaps, if she is lucky, also meet up with Fabiola's game. But the interview didn't go as well as she expected. During her interview, David, a food writer, and the interviewer claims he knows her from San Antonio, but Adela doesn't remember him. He accuses her of pandering to the taste of the rich, rather than focus on dishes that her middle-class followers can afford. The accusation rattles Adela, and as the interview progresses, she continues to stick her foot in her mouth. Out of annoyance, Matthias ends the interview. Adela finds herself in a bad mood from the interview. It annoys her greatly at the conclusions David makes about her cooking show. She leaves work to try to meet up with Fabi's match, but there is a stream of heavy traffic on the way. She arrives at the match venue, but it's too late as she misses Fabi's goal assist. Fabi is angry at Adela. She accuses her of always focusing on work. Promises of her favorite treat, ice cream, fail to get the girl out of her foul mood. Adela feels sad about disappointing Fabi. Single parenting is not easy and she thinks she is making a mess of it. She wishes her late husband Mauricio was alive. He always knows what to do in difficult situations. Socorro consoles her and reminds her that she is trying her best. Fabi is a teenager and must act her age. The only thing that excites Fabi is the thought of spending summer in their hometown San Antonio, but Adela doesn't share in her excitement. San Antonio reminds her of Mauricio, because they met there before they had to move over to Los Angeles for her cooking show, and she hasn't gone back since Mauricio died 3 years ago. But Socorro is there to encourage her. She advises her to quit hiding from her memories and move on with her life. It's officially summer and time for San Antonio. The road trip fascinates Fabi, as she takes pictures of the sights they pass through, but it's not the same for Adela. She complains about the weather, but it's a small price for her to pay to see Fabi excited and animated as she describes the fun places she would like to visit in San Antonio. They stop at Adela's favorite tacos Rapidos. It's her tradition to stop to get snacks whenever she's passing through. As she's giving her order in the queue, she runs into David, the food writer, from her interview. They both look surprised to see each other. Adela accuses him of ambushing her with the questions during the interview, but David only sees them as challenging questions. He is surprised to see her at the taco spot as he thinks that she would only patronize the rich places just like her food show. Adela finds his assumption about her insulting. She pays for her snacks and walks off to her family. They arrive at their restaurant Romero's. Fabi is excited to be back there after 3 years. The restaurant seems to be suffering as they aren't making too much profit. This comes after spending tons of money on renovations to give the restaurant a facelift. They meet Sandra. She is Mauricio's cousin who also manages the restaurant in Socorro's absence. She has a sort of vendetta against Adela for deserting Romero's and going ahead to become a fancy chef in the city. Sandra gives them bad news that the restaurant's head cook, Manny, has quit. He has been asking for a raise, but the restaurant can barely survive as it is. Socorro suggests that Adela helps them out in the kitchen just like old times while she tries to settle things with Manny. Sandra doesn't like the idea of having Adela back in the restaurant. She considers it her territory and doesn't want outsiders in her space. Fabi likes the idea of working at Romero's, and she pleads with Adela to accept the offer. Adela considers it and accepts, but she makes it clear that it would be for only one night. Adela walks into the kitchen, used to a fancier kitchen courtesy of her cooking show. She is surprised that renovations made in the restaurant did not extend to the kitchen. It looks the exact way it did 15 years ago when she started work at Romero's. Sandra is annoyed as she considers it a jab at her managerial skills. Adela takes over the kitchen while Fabi washes the plates. She tops off the meals with fancy herbs and spices, but the customers aren't used to them. Socorro tries to advise her to make simple dishes that the customers know, but Adela tells her that the spices are not fancy, they only help the meals taste better. They arrive home, and Socorro and Fabi find their way inside. Adela remains outside as she takes time to drink in the house. The last time she was here, she was with Mauricio, but today she is back as a widow. Socorro leads her to Mauricio's room. His memories hit her with force. His guitars still hang on the wall. His trophies lie around the room. She stares hard at their picture together as she tries hard not to break down into tears. Her phone rings and it is Matthias, her manager. He has some wonderful news for her career. It appears that the network wants her to work on a new summer series with other world top chefs. This opportunity will allow her to travel around Europe, but the downside is that she needs to be in London for the shoot in 10 days. Adela is excited about the show, but she stops short when she realizes that her summer holiday with Fabi in San Antonio has to be cut short. She doesn't sound too happy about doing this to Fabi after trying so hard to be in her good books. Matthias isn't too concerned about Fabi. He only sees the dollar bills the show will pay them. Adela knows that Fabi will not be swayed by playing football abroad. Matthias advises her to speak with her daughter and give him feedback the next day. The next morning, she prepares a huge breakfast with Fabi's favorites. The young girl is surprised and gets suspicious of Adela. Both Fabi and Socorro are happy when she tells them that she has another show on the way, but when she drops the bomb that they would have to spend their summer in Europe, all hell is let loose. Fabi is furious at Adela. The idea of attending a summer soccer camp in Europe doesn't make her better. Once again, Adela is choosing her work over her. Same old story. The girl runs off to her room. She is hurt that the summer holiday, which they planned for over a year, is about to be blown into smithereens. Fabi's insistence to spend her summer in San Antonio surprises Adela. In her teens, all she wanted was to leave San Antonio, but here, her daughter wants the opposite. Fabi steps out with her football to relieve the stress caused by her mother. Socorro's advice to turn down the offer meets deaf ears. Adela wants her international gig, and she sounds sure she can convince Fabi in the 10 days she has before the trip. Adela decides to continue cooking in Romero's until the restaurant hires a new cook. She suggests to Socorro that they get groceries from the farmer's market for some fresh ingredients to attract more customers. Socorro is apprehensive because of the costs, but Adela is adamant as she promises to pay for them. At the farmer's market, Adela tries to show Socorro the difference between fresh produce and store-bought ones. She runs into David again. She reluctantly allows him to help her carry her heavy bags. She is surprised when he tells her that he is a regular at Romero's. He takes her to his friend's stand for some fresh agua de melon drink. When she leaves him, she doesn't respond to David's question about seeing her around the town. Back at the restaurant, she prepares some delicacies with the produce she got at the local market. Socorro confirms that it tastes better than what they make in the restaurant, but they will not be able to continue buying there because it is more expensive, and their budgets are quite thin. She confides in Adela that she has thoughts of selling the restaurant as it has become more of a problem to her than a source of joy. The news shocks both Adela and Fabi. Adela considers the restaurant to be more than a property. She still has some fond memories of it. She met Mauricio in the restaurant, and Fabi also grew up in it. She isn't ready to lose the one thing that reminds her of the love of her life. She proposes to Socorro that she will take a more active role in the restaurant, starting with reinventing the menu, which has been the same for the past 30 years. Socorro has no choice as she agrees. After all, things couldn't get any worse than they already are. Adela doesn't seem to make any headway with Sandra. She tries very hard to stop Adela from reinventing some of their menus, but Adela doesn't get intimidated easily. She continues to avoid Matthias' calls, and Fabi is yet to come around to spending her summer in Europe. She eventually goes to take the call at the back. She asks for more time from Matthias to convince Fabi. Although he is frustrated at the time she is wasting, he likes the idea of Adela playing hard to respond, as it might work in her favor when it's time to renegotiate her contract. Socorro has an admirer. It's her favorite work neighbor, Patrick, and he is a regular at the restaurant. He promises her that they will keep seeing him as he has retired from running his gym. Socorro stares at him as he leaves the restaurant. Sandra guesses something might be going on between the two. David walks into Romero's for his usual elote. He is greeted by a kiss and hug from both Socorro and Sandra. It is obvious that he is well known and admired in the restaurant. Socorro sends Fabi to call Adela so she can introduce her to David. Fabi finds Adela making a call at the back. Adela quickly ends her call with Matthias and follows her daughter to the restaurant. She finds David waiting for her. At this point, it looks like he is stalking her. Socorro is surprised that Adela doesn't recognize David. He worked in Romero's one summer as a line cook, the same with Adela during their younger days. It seems he had a crush on Adela but couldn't tell her because she was already in a relationship with Mauricio. Adela remembers from her interview when he said something about it, and her memory of David comes back to her. She remembers him as Davy with the long hair and maybe a big face, but it seems that David has outgrown them as he appears embarrassed. David tells her that his editor suggests that he write a follow-up piece about her since the interview made waves online, and she is in San Antonio. Adela refuses to consider his request. She flatly tells him no as she still smarts from the embarrassment his last interview caused her. David tells her that a follow-up interview would be nice to explain things better to her audience. Fabi comes out and tells David that her mom will do it. She tells her mom that doing the interview is free press for Romero's. David likes the girl already. Adela reluctantly agrees to do the interview. They set a date and time for it to hold. Sandra looks at David with an unnerving stare. She suspects something already between the two. The next day, they meet at the Riverwalk for the interview. David records her as she answers his questions. Romero happens to have given her purpose in life by helping her build a career in cooking, meeting Mauricio, her late husband, and getting a new family with Socorro and her daughter Fabi. She tells him that she is reworking some of Romano's menu. Her eyes glow as she talks more about what she will be doing in Romero's. They are both lost in the moment as they stare deeply into each other's eyes. David tells her that he liked her first cooking show, Adela's Kitchen, which looked more authentic as she made her food than with the locals in mind. This seems a far cry from her fancy Alta Casino show, which is strictly high-class cuisine. David confesses to her that he had a crush on her back when they were younger. This comes as news to Adela. She never suspected it as she was deeply in love with Mauricio. She still misses Mauricio and doesn't want to discuss her feelings, so she ends their interview and tries to leave. Unfortunately, she runs smack dab into a man with ice cream. It's an embarrassing moment, but David helps her clean it off her nose. He apologizes for spooking her. He decides to make it up to her by taking her to get ice cream. He invites her to his book launch coming up soon. Davy, as Adela likes to call him, has stage fright and needs her to support him when he makes a speech at his book launch. Adela has conflicting emotions. She wants to get closer to David, but she still misses Mauricio. She doesn't give him a definite response. In the next scene, we see Fabi practicing her football in the park. She has taken so well to San Antonio. A little wonder Adela doesn't make any progress with her on the Europe issue. She meets a young boy her age. He also plays football and they get to talk. He invites her to play football with his team. Socorro encourages Adela to attend David's book launch. She is eager to see a romance brew between the two. She promises to take over cooking at the restaurant while Adela attends the book launch. The next set of recipes Adela makes from the ingredients they get from the farmer's market are twists of Romero's old recipes and still within their budget. Socorro looks wide-eyed at the delicacies. She and Fabi confirm that they are delicious and will be appreciated by customers at the restaurant. Adela is happy that she is making headway as regards Romero's. David publishes Adela's interview in the Telegram and customers begin to swarm Romero's. It seems that Adela's menu's twists also do the magic as their customers look excited at the burst of colors from the local produce that fill their plates. Sakura is excited that her restaurant is finally doing well. She frames the article and places it in a spot in the restaurant. Her friend Patrick comes to the restaurant to check out Romero's just like the other patrons. He seems to like Socorro but is too shy to tell her. He tries to find out from her when she will be retiring so they could find more time to spend together. Socorro replies to him unabashedly that she does not require to retire before they go out. Embarrassed at her brazen answer, she asks for his order and goes to ring it up. Adela is pleased that her plan worked, but Sandra isn't convinced by the teeming crowd in their restaurant. She tells Adela to wait for at least a week before she praises herself. Sandra has a problem with the amount of money that Adela spends on groceries. Adela ignores her negative energy as she focuses on making food. It seems Patrick means business. He touches Socorro's hands when she hands his order to him. Socorro looks shy and goes quiet at the display of affection from him. She hails David when he enters the restaurant. She announces that he will be eating on the house for the wonderful article about Romero that he published. David rejects the offer on the grounds that it would violate his journalistic integrity. He meets eyes with Adela and they both smile at each other. Adela doesn't know when she overspreads the mayo on the sandwich she is making. It's obvious that she finds David's presence distracting. She is unable to concentrate on her cooking. David reminds her of his book launch, but she gives him the same old excuse that she is too busy at the restaurant. He tries to convince her, but he gives up when he realizes that her mind is made up. Adela serves him his order in a package. He tries it out and considers it better than his favorite elote. Socorro proposes a little party to celebrate their success so far in the restaurant, but Adela is nervous. It seems Sandra's negativity has gotten to her as she proposes they wait it out and see if the crowd will keep coming. Socorro waves off her excuse and invites Sandra to join them later at her house, and surprisingly, she agrees to it. Mattias doesn't let up on disturbing Adela for a response. According to him, the network is on his neck, but unfortunately, Adela is yet to convince Fabi. She ends the call and joins her family for some much-needed relaxation time. They have fun playing games. Fabi reminds them that the last time they had this much fun was at their going-away party when her father was still alive. The memory has everyone looking sad, but Adela cheers them up with her rock, paper, scissors display that has everyone in stitches by the time she is done. At the end of their game night and with the two women alone, Socorro tries to convince Adela to attend David's book launch to show the restaurant's appreciation for the Telegram article he wrote. She suspects that Adela likes David, but she is trying so hard not to fall in love again. Adela tries to deny it, but Socorro advises her to live her life and be happy. Talks of love and moving on scare Adela. She tells Socorro that she is not ready to move on yet. She bids her mother-in-law goodnight as she hurries off to her room. She is emotional as she stares at her picture with Mauricio in her room. She ignores a call that comes from Mattias and goes off to sleep. The next day, she surprises David with her presence at his book launch. His nerves disappear and he smiles at her with a twinkle in his eyes as she walks into the room for the book launch. He quickly handles his business with the book launch and introduces Adela to some of the local food community in San Antonio. Adela is unable to stay till the end of the party because of Fabi's football match, but David opts to accompany her, leaving behind his party. What love can make a man do? They are lucky as the match is still on when they arrive at the field. Fabi scores a goal. She looks excited when she sees her mother among her family cheering her on in the crowd. Fabi is intrigued by David when he compares her to Alex Morgan, her favorite player in football. It seems he is a fan of the sport too. At the end of the game, David and Adela say their goodbyes and they share an intimate hug. When she joins Socorro and Fabi to go home, Socorro is anxious to hear about her outing at David's book launch. She tries to live vicariously through Adela as she asks her if they kissed. She is disappointed when Adela has no juicy story to share with her. They arrive home and they meet Matthias waiting for Adela on their doorstep. He has finally had enough of waiting for Adela to give him feedback. Adela is surprised to see him as she introduces him to Socorro. They continue with their discussion outside while Socorro takes Fabi inside, but they eavesdrop on them through the window. Matthias finds it laughable that Adela prefers to waste her time at the scrummy Romero's while she has the chance to tour Europe with international chefs. Adela gets angry at how he degrades Romero's, which she considers her daughter's heritage. Matthias leaves her with the option of giving him an answer by the next day or risking losing everything she has worked for. The mood after Matthias leaves is dreary. Fabi suspects Adela will be making a decision soon, but she still doesn't want to leave Antonio. Socorro comes up with an idea to make Adela remain in San Antonio. She observes her with great interest as she mans the kitchen, just like she never left it at all. With a replacement for Manny not yet concluded, she thinks of Adela staying. But Sandra gets angry and doesn't want to consider the option of Adela not returning to her base. Sakura seems weighed down by it all. She wants Adela to stay back as she has single-handedly turned around Romero's fortune, but she doesn't think that they can compare to the offer her show offers her. Patrick notices her worried look, and he advises her to simply support Adela and allow her to figure out her life by herself. Satisfied with his advice, Patrick stops her with another bombshell. He fancies getting together with her outside the restaurant. Oh, Dios. You just have to see Socorro's face. Socorro picks up the courage to ask Adela if she would like to take over Romero's since she is getting old and she wants the restaurant to remain in their family. The question takes Adela aback. She thanks Socorro for the offer but tells her that she has her career to think about. Socorro trusts only Adela and she feels that Sandra still has more things to learn about the business, owing to the various bad decisions she has made in the restaurant already. Sandra walks in on them. She overhears their discussion and is hurt that Socorro considers Adela to take over the restaurant while she has been with her for so long. She accuses Adela of staying around because she feels guilty about leaving Romero's in the past, which she will still repeat when she accepts her show's offer. Adela is lost for words, as she doesn't know how to defend herself. To make matters worse, David comes to the restaurant to ask her out on a date. She shuts him down immediately and informs him of the offer to tour Europe. The news of the offer surprises David. He thought that Adela had finally come to stay in San Antonio. She tells him that it's time to move on with her life and career. He walks out of Romero's dejectedly, in a worse mood than he came in with. Socorro stares at him in pity. During cleanup, Adela calls for a family meeting and informs Fabi and Sakura that she is finally taking her show's offer. She claims she doesn't deserve Romero's because she feels responsible for taking Mauricio away to pursue her dreams. Fabi is devastated by the news, but Adela's mind is made up as she already told Matthias to take her to the airport. She informs Fabi that she will stay with Sakura while she travels for her show. She hugs her sad daughter, who's in tears, while she leaves Romero's. Sandra finds both grandma and granddaughter with sad faces as she misses Adela's farewell speech. Sakura goes off on her for saying hurtful things to Adela earlier, which must have pushed her to take the decision that has made Fabi sad. Fabi is also mad at Sandra for chasing her mom away. Sandra realizes her mistake and apologizes to them. She has an idea to speak with Adela before she gets to the airport. She rushes out of the restaurant with Fabi right on her heels, leaving only Socorro alone in Romero's, but they are covered when Patrick comes right on time to help Socorro out with the restaurant. Adela is in the car with Matthias, who's taking her to the airport. But Matthias notices her long face and comments on it, but she waves it off. Matthias finds it difficult to understand why Adela doesn't feel happy with her decision to take up the show as he drives them to the airport. Adela can't help but feel that she has let down her family, especially Fabi. Just to make herself feel a bit happy, she asks Matthias to stop her at Tacos Rapidos for some good soul food. He reluctantly parks the car and tells her to be quick. Fabi and Sandra find her in the queue there as she orders her snack. She is surprised to see them. Fabi tells her that she knew that she couldn't leave San Antonio without visiting Mauricio's favorite Tacos Rapidos restaurant. Sandra apologizes to her for her hurtful words, but Adela waves it off. She admits that she only came back because she felt guilty about leaving San Antonio and taking Mauricio away from his family and roots. But Fabi tells her that it wasn't her fault since Mauricio died of a failed heart. Sandra begs her to return to Romero's where she rightfully belongs as she is not capable of managing it alone. Fabi informs Adela that she wants to stay back in San Antonio because she wants her fun and happy mother back who has time for her soccer games. Adela becomes emotional at Fabi's speech. She goes over to Matthias. A look at her face tells him what she has in mind. He threatens her that if they miss their flight, she risks losing the contract and also Alta Casana. Faced with a very difficult decision, Adela remembers the wonderful times she spent in San Antonio, the smiles on Fabi's face when she saw her mother at her soccer game, and the smile on David's face when he saw her at his book launch. Assured that she has a lot to gain in San Antonio, she makes her decision and tells Matthias that she will stay back in Antonio. Matthias is furious at her. He threatens her that she wouldn't get a job in Hollywood, but Adela doesn't just care. She tells him that she doesn't need him anymore and even fires him. He walks off in anger as Adela goes over to meet Fabi and Sandra. They are excited to have her back. She buys David's favorite snacks from Tacos Rapidos as a peace offering. When she arrives at his office, David sniffs it in the air and asks around, who brought his favorite snack to the office. He is surprised when Adela shows up. Apparently, she should have been on her way to sign her contract. He smiles sheepishly as he receives the bag from her. Adela apologizes to him for the way she treated him at Romero's. She admits to him that she likes him and might even love him. David is excited at her admission. He tells her that he loves her too. They share a private moment in the full glare of his colleagues. They are excited for the couple as they clap happily for them. Adela starts her show Romero's Casana right in Romero's kitchen. The cooking show appears more budget-friendly as local people can afford it. Sandra and Adela become better work colleagues. Sandra becomes a manager in training as Sakuro introduces her to the bank while she plans her retirement. At Sakuro's retirement party, Adela toasts Sakuro for accepting her into her family 20 years ago and giving her a job and a family. Sakuro appreciates everyone for coming. They all separate into pairs as the music comes on. Even little Fabi has a dancing partner. Adela and David share a smoldering kiss on the dance floor. She looks happy on the dance floor. Although she wasn't searching for it, she succeeded in finding love in San Antonio and in David's arms.